The military plays a crucial role in the development of a nation. It facilitates implementation of government's policies and protects the citizens from any external or internal threat. The military consists of branches such as an army, navy, air force, and in certain countries the Marines and Coast Guard. The Imperial Russian Army was the land armed force of the Russian Empire, active from around 1721 to the Russian Revolution of 1917. In the early 1850s, the Russian army consisted of more than 800,000 regular soldiers and nearly 250,000 irregulars, occupied first place as a world's largest armed forces. As a major European power, Russia could not escape the wars, but as an adversary to Napoleon, the leadership of the new Emperor Alexander I of Russia, who came to the throne as the result of his father's murder, became crucial. The Russian army in 1805 had many characteristics of ancien regime organization. There was no permanent formation above the regimental level, senior officers were largely recruited from aristocratic circles, and the Russian soldier, in line with 18th century practice, was regularly beaten and punished to instill discipline. Furthermore, many lower-level officers were poorly trained and had difficulty getting their men to perform the sometimes complex maneuvers required in a battle. Nevertheless, the Russians did have a fine artillery arm manned by soldiers trained in academies and who would regularly fight hard to prevent their pieces from falling into enemy hands. Following Russia's defeat in the Crimean War during the reign of Alexander II, the Minister of War, Dmitry Milutin, introduced military reforms. The reforms carried on during Milutin's long tenure abolished the system of conscription of children, and resulted in the levy system being introduced in Russia and military districts being created across the country. As part of Milutin's reforms, on the 1st of January 1874, the Emperor approved a conscription statute that made military service compulsory for all 20-year-old males, with the term reduced for land army to 6 years plus 9 years in reserve. French army was the second largest army in the world in the 19th century. According to British historian Niall Ferguson, France is the most successful military power in European history. The French participated in 50 of the 125 major European wars that have been fought since 1495, more than any other European state. Napoleon Bonaparte was a French military and political leader. The Napoleonic era saw French power and influence reach immense heights, even though the period of domination was relatively brief. In the century, France had transformed demographic leverage to military and political weight. The French population was 19 million in 1700, but this had grown to over 29 million in 1800, much higher than that of most other European powers. These numbers permitted France to raise armies at a rapid pace. Furthermore, military innovations carried out during the Revolution and the Consulate, evidenced by improvements in artillery and cavalry capabilities on top of better army and staff organization, gave the French army a decisive advantage in the initial stages of the Napoleonic Wars. Another ingredient of success was Napoleon Bonaparte himself. Intelligent, charismatic, and a military genius, Napoleon absorbed the latest military theories of the day and applied them in the battlefield with deadly effect. German army surpassed French army and became second largest army. The German army faced experienced regular French soldiers and guard mobile under Napoleon III of France. Within the first month of war, the German army encircled big French armies and destroyed them. The results of these wars was the emergence of a powerful German nation-state and a major shift in the balance of power on the European continent. The Imperial German Army now was the most powerful military in Europe. In 1922, the Red Army became the world's largest army. Red Army was the army and the air force of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic and after 1922 the USSR. The Red Army provided the largest land force in the Allied victory in the European theater of World War II, and its invasion of Manchuria assisted the unconditional surrender of Imperial Japan. At the end of World War II, the Red Army had over 500 rifle divisions and about a tenth of that number of tank formations. Their experience of war gave the Soviets such faith in tank forces that the infantry force was cut by 2/3. The tank corps of the late war period were converted to tank divisions, and from 1957 the rifle divisions were converted to motor rifle divisions. After the Soviet Union ceased to exist in December 1991, the ground forces remained under the command of the Commonwealth of Independent States until it was formally abolished on the 14th of February 1992. The Soviet Army was principally succeeded by the ground forces of the Russian Federation in Russian territory along with the rest of the ground forces in post-Soviet states. It took us almost 15 hours to make this video for you. Please like and subscribe, it will take you only 2 seconds. US Army is also one of the largest armies in the world. The history of the United States Army began in 1775. From its formation, the United States Army has been the primary land-based part of the United States Armed Forces. The Continental Army was founded in response to a need for professional soldiers in the American Revolutionary War to fight the invading British Army. Until the 1940s, the Army was relatively small in peacetime. The Army was under the control of the War Department until 1947, and since then the Defense Department. The U.S. Army fought the Indian Wars of the 1790s, the War of 1812, American Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War. Following the Cold War's end in 1991, Army has focused primarily on Western Asia. In 1975, the Chinese military surpassed the USSR military, and the Chinese military becomes the largest military in the world. Chinese military history underwent a dramatic transformation in the 20th century, with the People's Liberation Army beginning in 1927 with the start of the Chinese Civil War, and developing from a peasant guerrilla force into what remains the largest armed force in the world. During the 1950s, the PLA with Soviet assistance began to transform itself from a peasant army into a modern one. Since 1949, China has used 9 different military strategies, which the PLA calls strategic guidelines. Part of this process was the reorganization that created 13 military regions in 1955. The PLA also contained many former National Revolutionary Army units and generals who had defected to the PLA. Ma Hongbin and his son Ma Dunjing were the only 2 Muslim generals who led a Muslim unit to ever serve in the PLA. In November 1950, some units of the PLA under the name of the People's Volunteer Army intervened in the Korean War as United Nations forces under General Douglas MacArthur approached the Yalu River. Under the weight of this offensive, Chinese forces drove MacArthur's forces out of North Korea and captured Seoul, but was subsequently pushed back south of Pyongyang north of the 38th parallel. The war also served as a catalyst for the rapid modernization of the PLA. In 1962, the PLA ground force also fought India in the Sino-Indian War, achieving all objectives. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more Bar Char race videos.